Do you believe love can emerge from the most unexpected places? What if I told you that a wealthy doctor, driven by wounded pride and a thirst for revenge, chose to marry a humble gardener, someone deemed unattractive by society, just to humiliate his ex-fiancée? It sounds like one of those unbelievable tales, but this isn't just another shallow plot. It's a journey filled with emotional twists and profound lessons about love, forgiveness, and personal growth. Let's be honest. How many times have you heard of someone using another person as a pawn in their game of pride? What makes this story different is how the roles reverse and the lessons come to life in the most surprising moments. Why would a man who seemingly has it all choose someone with nothing to offer, at least on the surface? And how could such a calculated decision end up challenging everything he thought he knew about himself and the world? Get ready to dive into a story that will stir your emotions and make you reflect on the choices we make when we're hurt. This isn't just a tale of romance. It's a journey of redemption, growth, and the transformative power of human connection. Curious about how a simple contract turned into one of the most moving stories you'll ever hear? Stick with me, because this is only the beginning of a journey that's bound to captivate you. Tiago Fonseca, a renowned surgeon accustomed to the respect and admiration of his patients and colleagues, saw his personal life crumble when he was betrayed by Renata. For someone like him, who spent his days saving lives with the precision of a scalpel, that betrayal felt like an open wound he couldn't stitch. Driven by a mix of wounded pride and a thirst for revenge, Tiago decided he wouldn't let the humiliation go unchallenged. Funny how emotions can unbalance even the most composed individuals, isn't it? There he was, a man who faced challenges daily in the operating room, yet felt utterly defeated in the matters of the heart. One ordinary morning, while observing the gardens of the hospital where he worked, he noticed Cecilia, a gardener who seemed almost invisible to others but not to him. There was something intriguing about her, the way she tended to the plants with such care, as if she could hear what they needed. Cecilia, with her simple clothes and a face marked by a tough life, was the complete opposite of Renata. She was authentic, without pretenses, someone who represented everything Tiago wanted to use to prove to the world, and to himself, that he didn't need superficiality to be happy. And so, Tiago, with the pragmatism of a doctor, devised his plan. He decided to marry Cecilia, not for love but for revenge. The idea seemed clear in his mind: turn that humble gardener into a symbol of everything he wanted to flaunt in Renata's face. But life, oh, it's a master at defying even the best-laid plans. While Tiago thought he was in control, fate was already preparing its own surprises. After all, who could imagine that a decision made out of pride and anger could be the start of something much bigger? Tiago knew his choice of Cecilia wasn't conventional. After all, who would imagine that a renowned doctor, with a brilliant career and an apparently perfect life, would choose a humble gardener as a wife? But to him, that was precisely the point. Cecilia represented simplicity, the authenticity that was absent in Renata, whose life seemed like a parade of appearances and shallow interests. With Cecilia, there were no masks, no promises made only to be broken. She was real, someone who didn't need flashy jewelry or luxurious parties to be noticed, and that's what made her perfect for Tiago's plan. However, approaching Cecilia wasn't as simple as he had imagined. She was a woman of principles, someone whose strength came not from appearances, but from the resilience built through years of hardship. When Tiago approached her with his proposal, he was direct, almost clinical, as he usually was in his decisions. He explained the arrangement as if presenting a medical case, a contractual marriage with no emotional involvement, in exchange for financial support to treat Cecilia's gravely ill mother. To Tiago, it all made sense. Logical, practical, almost painless, at least from his perspective. But logic doesn't always win over the heart, and Cecilia, though touched by the chance to help her mother, hesitated. The proposal was cold, impersonal, and she knew she would be just a pawn in Tiago's game of revenge. Yet her reality left little room for choice. How could she refuse something that could save her mother's life? For Cecilia, the contract represented a sacrifice, a weight she'd have to bear, even if it meant stepping into a world where she didn't belong. Tiago, on the other hand, had no idea that choosing Cecilia would be the first step in transforming not only his life, but also his heart. Cecilia couldn't sleep the night after Tiago's proposal. The idea of marrying without love, without a dream, without that fairy tale she had secretly always wanted, was almost unbearable. But at the same time, the weight of reality pulled her down like an anchor. Her mother needed help, and there was no other way out. Cecilia felt like she was being dragged into an operating room without anesthesia, fully aware of the pain to come but unable to escape. After all, what wouldn't someone do for the love of their family? The day she gave her answer, Cecilia looked more like a patient signing a consent form than a bride accepting a proposal. She looked at Tiago, this man so sure of himself, and saw something that unsettled her: indifference. Tiago was cold, calculating, as if his proposal was just another transaction in his meticulously planned life. "I accept," she said with a firm voice but a broken heart. Deep down, she knew she was stepping into a world where she didn't belong, but her love for her mother outweighed any shattered pride or broken dream. And so, the contract was sealed. Tiago, relieved to have Cecilia by his side to execute his revenge, and Cecilia resigned to the choice she had made to save her mother. But life has a curious way of turning sacrifices into seeds of something unexpected. At that moment, neither of them could foresee how this mechanical, soulless agreement would become the foundation for a story that would not only change their lives, but touch the hearts of anyone who heard it. Because even the coldest plans can be warmed by the surprising heat of true transformation. The wedding day arrived, and the contrast couldn't have been more striking. Tiago, impeccable in his perfectly tailored suit, was the picture of power and confidence. Meanwhile, Cecilia, in a simple dress with her hair tied in an unpretentious style, seemed out of place in that luxurious setting. But what no one expected was that she would show an inner strength capable of transforming that cold ceremony into a memorable event. When the judgmental gazes of the guests fell upon her, Cecilia held her head high, walking through the hall with the grace of someone who knew exactly who she was, a woman who didn't need jewelry or status to have dignity. The reception became the stage for a particularly tense moment. Renata, with her smile full of malicious intent, seized every opportunity to needle Cecilia. Subtle comments about her appearance, her background, and even the absurdity of the marriage. But Cecilia, rather than taking the bait, responded with calm and intelligence, like someone who knows that strength isn't in the volume of your voice, but in the firmness of your words. Each of her responses was like a scalpel, precise, sharp, and impossible to ignore. Tiago, who until then had observed everything with a certain detachment, began to see Cecilia in a new light. This woman, whom he thought of as merely a pawn in his game, was showing a courage he hadn't expected. And in that moment something began to change within Tiago. He, who had seen Cecilia as nothing more than a means to an end, began to realize there was much more to her than he had imagined. The way she handled Renata, without stooping to her level, moved him. For the first time, Tiago saw that he might have underestimated Cecilia, and without realizing it, he started noticing details he had previously overlooked. The calm tone of her voice, her confident gestures, the way she carried herself under pressure. What he didn't know yet was that this initial admiration was only the beginning of a much bigger transformation. As days went by, something unexpected started to happen between Tiago and Cecilia. The comfortable silence that filled the house was gradually replaced by conversations. At first, they were about trivial topics: the weather, the plants in the garden, work at the hospital. But slowly those exchanges began to grow deeper. Cecilia, with her disarming honesty, shared stories of her childhood, the challenges she faced caring for her mother alone, and the times she had to choose between her needs and those of her family. Tiago, who always saw himself as the solver of others' problems, began to realize that in this relationship, he wasn't the only one carrying scars. One night, after a long day at work, Tiago found himself sitting next to Cecilia, staring at the starry sky in the garden. He, who rarely talked about himself, surprised himself by opening up about the pressures of his medical career, the mistakes that haunted him, and the nights he questioned his choices. In that moment, Cecilia looked at him, not as the brilliant doctor everyone admired, but as a man who needed to be heard. "Everyone carries their own battles, Tiago," she said, with the simplicity of someone who had learned that lesson long ago. That phrase stuck with him, as if something finally clicked. The connection that grew between them wasn't immediate, but it strengthened like roots finding fertile ground. Tiago began to see Cecilia in a way he had never imagined, not as a solution to his wounded pride, but as someone with whom he could be vulnerable. Cecilia, in turn, began to realize that behind Tiago's rigid exterior was a man who needed healing too. And as these conversations brought them closer, both started to wonder, what if this marriage, which had started as a cold agreement, had the potential to become something real? It was on a quiet morning when Cecilia received the news that would change everything. A simple test, 2 revealing lines. She was pregnant. The emotions hit her like a wave. Surprise, fear, and a trace of joy she wasn't sure she was allowed to feel. This pregnancy was a sign of something greater, a new life growing amid the chaos of a marriage that began so coldly. She hesitated to tell Tiago, fearing how he would react. How do you tell a man who entered this relationship with such calculated motives that they were about to share the most profound bond possible? When Cecilia finally shared the news, Tiago was stunned. A man who always had answers for everything, he was speechless for long seconds. Pregnant? He had never considered the possibility. This wasn't part of his plan, nor included in the terms of the contract he had proposed. Yet, as Cecilia explained, he felt something shift inside him, a mix of anxiety and a newfound sense of responsibility he didn't yet know how to process. Tiago, the meticulous doctor, was suddenly faced with something he couldn't control. The pregnancy unearthed a truth he had been avoiding. He needed to reassess his life, his choices, and most importantly, what this marriage truly meant. In the days that followed, Tiago began to change. He started observing Cecilia differently, the way she cared for herself, how she gently touched her growing belly, as if already connected to the baby. What once was a plan born out of pride and revenge began to transform into thoughts of the future, thoughts of Bernardo, the name he would suggest for the baby. For the first time, Tiago began to invest not just in the new life that was coming, but also in the relationship that was slowly transforming with Cecilia. Renata couldn't accept that Tiago had moved on, especially with Cecilia, someone she considered so beneath her level. Driven by jealousy and frustration, she decided to confront him directly, hoping he would succumb to the memories of their past. Using her characteristic charm and a dose of manipulation, she showed up at the hospital where Tiago worked, pretending to need medical assistance to get his attention. "You know I still miss you, Tiago," she said with a calculated smile, as if expecting those words to be enough to tear down any barriers. But to her surprise, he remained impassive. Tiago, who might once have been vulnerable to Renata's schemes, now saw her with complete clarity. He recognized how hollow her promises were, and more importantly, how much he had changed since Cecilia entered his life. "Renata, don't you understand? There's nothing left to pursue here, it's over," he replied, with a firmness that left no room for misinterpretation. The rejection was a blow to Renata, but for Tiago, it was a moment of liberation. He had finally broken free from the cycle of manipulation and insecurity that Renata had created around him. For the first time, he felt completely in control of his own life. As Renata stormed out, visibly upset, Tiago felt the weight lift from his shoulders. He knew this wasn't just about saying no to Renata, but about choosing who he wanted to be. Cecilia, with her honesty and strength, had shown him that there was something far more valuable than pride or revenge. And by making this decision, Tiago took a decisive step toward building the future he wanted, not based on past wounds, but on a present filled with real possibilities. Tiago knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to heal the wounds he had caused or erase the pain he had inflicted on Cecilia. That's why he chose a special place for his attempt at redemption, the public garden Cecilia used to tend before their marriage. Transformed with new flower paths and freshly painted benches, the space reflected Cecilia's essence, simple, yet full of beauty and meaning. When she saw it, she couldn't hide her surprise. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked, with a mix of curiosity and caution. Tiago took a deep breath, preparing to say something he rarely said. "I'm sorry." The words came with difficulty, but also with sincerity. Tiago admitted that when he married Cecilia, he didn't see her as a person with her own dreams, pains, and hopes, but as part of a selfish plan. He spoke about how living with her had changed his perspective on the world and himself. "You've shown me that there are things money can't buy, Cecilia. I want to be a better person. For you, for us, and for Bernardo." There was something in his tone, a blend of regret and hope, that touched Cecilia. But she wasn't naive. After everything they had been through, trusting him again wouldn't come easily. Cecilia, with the serenity that defined her, responded cautiously but honestly. "I don't know if I can forget what happened, Tiago, but maybe I can try to forgive." That small maybe was all Tiago needed to know that there was still a chance to rebuild what they had, or rather, build something entirely new. As they walked through the garden side by side, they both felt that this moment wasn't just an apology, but a new beginning. And although the road ahead was still filled with uncertainties, they shared one thing: the desire to move forward together. The birth of Bernardo was a turning point in Tiago and Cecilia's lives. Holding his son for the first time, Tiago experienced something entirely new, a mix of vulnerability, unconditional love, and an overwhelming desire to be the best father he could be. That tiny, fragile being had the power to rearrange all of his priorities. For the first time, work, status, and the wounds of the past seemed insignificant compared to the responsibility of nurturing a new life. In that moment, Tiago, the doctor so used to saving others, realized that Bernardo had saved him. As Tiago immersed himself in fatherhood, Cecilia watched with a mix of joy and relief. He threw himself into caring for the baby with a dedication she had never seen before, waking up in the middle of the night, changing diapers, and even singing lullabies despite his tone deafness. Tiago also began to reorganize his hospital schedule, delegating tasks and cutting back on overtime to spend more time at home. It was a transformed Tiago, someone who now fully understood the value of building moments with his family. At the same time, Cecilia found new strength in Bernardo, a bond that united the couple in ways they couldn't have imagined. The arrival of Bernardo brought not just new life into their home, but also a renewed purpose for Tiago and Cecilia. The couple, whose journey began with pride and revenge, now found themselves creating something real and solid. Tiago started planning for the future with Cecilia, thinking about how he could support her dreams, while she saw him not just as a husband, but as a true partner. Though the road to this point had been filled with challenges, Bernardo was living proof that even the most unlikely stories could blossom into something extraordinary. Over time, Tiago and Cecilia began shaping a life that was truly theirs, a combination of efforts, dreams, and a fresh vision for the future. Tiago, now fully aware of how much Cecilia meant to him, decided to support her in pursuing one of her biggest dreams, opening her own landscaping business. For Cecilia, gardening was more than just work. It was a way of expressing her soul. And Tiago, who once saw gardens as little more than a backdrop, now understood the passion they represented. He helped Cecilia draft a business plan, invest in the necessary tools, and even used his connections at the hospital to promote her work. Gradually, the business began to thrive, and Cecilia blossomed along with it. She not only created stunning landscapes, but also touched people's lives by transforming ordinary spaces into sanctuaries of beauty and peace. Tiago, for his part, found a balance he had never thought possible. He maintained his medical career but now set clear boundaries, always reserving time for Cecilia and Bernardo. Together, they built a routine that, while not perfect, was filled with love and respect. Each day served as a reminder that even the most improbable relationships could become strong with effort and intention. What started as a contractual marriage evolved into something much greater. Tiago and Cecilia not only learned to love each other, but also to grow together. Tiago discovered that life isn't about controlling everything, while Cecilia realized that her dreams could be bigger than the limitations reality seemed to impose. The garden Tiago had transformed to apologize to Cecilia became a symbol of their journey, a testament to how, with care, patience, and dedication, even the most barren grounds could bear fruit. Now that you've followed this deeply moving story, let me ask you this. How many times have you faced seemingly impossible choices in your own life? Tiago and Cecilia's journey shows us that even the hardest decisions can lead to life-changing lessons and incredible opportunities. What are you doing today to nurture a better future? Are you letting past wounds define who you are, or are you ready to use those experiences as stepping stones to growth and transformation? This isn't just a story about an unlikely marriage. It's about resilience, forgiveness, and the ability to find meaning in life's most challenging moments. And now it's your turn to take these lessons and apply them to your own journey. Ask yourself, what can I change today to create a story worth telling? It could be as small as reaching out to someone you care about, or as big as finally pursuing a dream you've put on hold. Before you go, I invite you to join this journey with us. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep discovering stories as emotional and inspiring as this one. Believe me, there's so much more to come, and I don't want you to miss a thing. Together, let's transform our lives one story at a time.